Hey, good morning, guys. Today is Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. Almost Christmas. So hope everyone's doing well. Last week we finished Leviticus 9 and 10. The priests are kind of getting set up. The laws, the rules are making a holy place. Aaron lost two of his kids because they weren't fully clean, holy, so they had to deal with that. And now we are going to jump into chapter 11 today. We'll do 11 and 12, and it's on cleanliness again. This one's on food. So the laws of like what animals can and can't eat. That's in here. You'll see I know Seventh-day Adventists, they don't eat pork still, and they follow some of these rules. So this is like clean and unclean animals. And really what it's setting up is not just so much obedience, but also God is trying to separate his people from the rest of the pagans, the ones who just kind of do anything and whatever they want. He's setting his people apart and making them clean and holy. So as they kind of go over all these rules, what you can and can't eat, just think of that. These are his chosen people that he brought out of Egypt, and he wants to set them apart and not get diluted into the rest of the Canaanites or whatever society they might come across that doesn't have these same kind of rules. So the idea is to remain clean and holy and separate themselves from the dirtiness, the filth that the world has to offer. So we'll jump into 11 right here. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, say to the Israelites of all the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, say to the Israelites of all the animals that live on the land, these are the ones you may eat. You may eat any animal that has a divided hoof and that chooses cud. So like cow, sheep, goat, right? Like those all have split hooves and they chew their cud. There are some that only chew the cud or only have a divided hoof, but you must not eat them. The camel, though it chews its cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is ceremonially unclean for you. The hyrax, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean from you. And the pig, though it has a divided hoof, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Of all the creatures living in the water, so if anybody's curious why Jewish people don't eat pork, this is where they laid it out. The pig doesn't chew the cud, so it doesn't fall into these guidelines. This is where those laws came about. Of all the creatures living in the water of the seas and the streams, you may eat any that have fins and scales. But all creatures in the seas or streams that do not have fins and scales, whether among all the swarming things or among all the other living creatures in the water, you are to regard as unclean. And since you are to regard them as unclean, you must not eat their meat. You must regard their carcasses as unclean. Anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales is to be regarded as unclean. These are so they're fish and fish only, like crustaceans and lobster. Nope. These are the birds you are to regard as unclean and not eat because they are unclean. The eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, any kind of black kite, and any kind of raven, the horned owl, the screech owl, the gull, any kind of hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, and any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects. So those are the birds don't eat. They can eat like a pigeon, a dove, quail, but these most of these are carnivorous or scavengers, so those are unclean. Remember, all these rules are just to keep God's people clean, separated from the rest of the dirty earth, okay? All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be regarded as unclean by you. There are, however, some flying insects that walk on all fours that you may eat. those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Any of these you eat, any kind of locust, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. So they can eat those. But all other flying insects that have 4 legs you are to regard as unclean. You will make yourselves unclean by these. Whoever touches their carcass will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean until the evening. Every animal that does not have a divided hoof or that does not chew the cud is unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up their carcasses must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. These animals are unclean for you. Of the animals that move along it's like when a cat sheds, right? You're going to have that for a while. Of the animals that move along the ground, these are the unclean for you. The weasel, the rat, any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, and the chameleon. Of all those that move along the ground, these are unclean for you. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean till evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, that article, whatever it is, whatever its use, will be unclean, whether it is made of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth. Put it in water, it will be unclean until the evening, and then it will be clean. If one of them falls into a clay pot, everything in it will be unclean, and you must break the pot. Any food you are allowed to eat that has come into contact with water from any such pot is unclean, and any liquid that is drunk from such pot is unclean. Anything that one of the carcasses falls on becomes unclean. So these unclean carcasses, they got cooties. They're not clean, they're not holy. It's just the way it is. And so God's just kind of making this OCD rhythm of this is clean, this isn't, this is holy. And as they develop these habits, this is what separates them from the rest of the pagan world. Anything that one of their carcasses falls becomes unclean. An oven or cooking pot must be broken up. They are unclean, and you are not to regard them. And you are to regard them as unclean. A spring, however, or a cistern for collecting water remains clean. But anyone who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. If a carcass falls on any seeds that are to be planted, they remain clean. But if water has been put on the seeds and the carcass falls on it, then it is unclean for you. If an animal that you are allowed to eat dies, anyone who touches its carcass will be unclean till evening. Anyone who eats some of its carcass must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean until evening. Anyone who picks up the carcass must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean until evening. Every creature that moves along the ground is to be regarded as unclean. It is not to be eaten. You are not to eat any creature that moves along the ground, whether it moves on its belly or walks on all fours or on many feet. It is unclean. Do not defile yourselves by any of these creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean by means of them or be made unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves along the ground. I am the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore, be holy, because I am holy. These are the regulations concerning animals, birds, and every living thing that moves about in the water, every creature that moves on the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between living creature that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. Let's jump into chapter 12. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, a woman who becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days, just as she is unclean during her monthly period. On the 8th day, the boy is to be circumcised. Then the woman must wait 33 days to be purified from her bleeding. She must not touch anything sacred or go to the sanctuary until the days of her purification are over. If she gives birth to a daughter, for 2 weeks the woman will be unclean as during her period. Then she must wait 66 days to be purified from her bleeding. When the days of her purification for a son or daughter are over, she is to bring to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting a year-old lamb for a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a dove for a sin offering. He shall offer them before the Lord to make atonement for her, and then she will be ceremonially clean from her flow of blood. These are the regulations for the woman who gives birth to a boy or a girl. But if she cannot afford a lamb, she is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for her and she will be clean. So blood is just a big part of the Bible. They take it very serious. It's holy. They're not saying like childbirth is bad. So being ceremonially unclean did not mean someone was sinful. Women became unclean because of the bleeding. And then let's see. What I find fascinating was like when they couldn't afford a lamb, then they could do it with a pigeon or a dove. And that was Mary's offering when Jesus was born. It's in Luke chapter 2:22. I'll try to do a Christmas one next week. And it kind of indicated that Jesus was from the poorer crowd because they didn't, even though like later on he is the lamb to be sacrificed, but his mom Mary brought just the birds because they couldn't afford the lamb. And so kind of a cool deal in this season. But anyway, let's take this away as we want to be as clean and holy as possible because that's where we can really meet God and show our obedience to the Lord. And this time, we're just going to be grateful for having those second chances, for Jesus dying, for being the sacrifice for us, because we're not perfect. And even though we may try to be clean all the time, we fail at it. And, we're just grateful that the Lord sent his son for us. So love you guys. Merry Christmas coming up. Remember, this is what it's all about. This is the season. I mean, Emmanuel, God with us. God sent his son to be with us. And man, what a season full of love and hope and miracles. So hope you're all having a great week, and I will see you soon.